Welcome to TLD Talks, where we share insights about key legal and business matters that are impacting SMEs today. Bringing together experts from a range of backgrounds, we will be tackling the issues that matter to you. I'm Ed Simpson, CEO of the Legal Director, and I'm delighted to welcome back to the podcast Chris Parr. Hello, Chris.
Good morning.
So, Chris, we did a podcast together in December where we talked about negotiation at a fairly high level. It sparked a lot of interest, so we thought we should come back to the subject and delve a little deeper into the subject of negotiation and look at, in particular, some really practical aspects of the process. And today, I'd like to do a deep dive into preparation and planning. It was something that we just touched on very briefly in our last chat. We talked about BATNA, or the best alternative to a negotiated agreement, that concept. But given how important preparation is to a successful outcome in a negotiation, I wanted to spend some time today examining what preparation you can and should be doing for a negotiation.
Yes, makes perfect sense.
So let's set the scene and assume we've just got two parties involved and that they have agreed there's something they want to negotiate about. I'm going to appoint you, Chris, as the point man for your side, and you've got a week to prepare. So where are you going to start?
Just a quick insert there, the point about two parties. It's often overlooked once you get to three or more parties in a negotiation, that the complexities go exponential because you get all sorts of permutations. So we're staying away from that particular bag of worms. So yeah, going into the planning, where do I start? I think you have to pick who's going. And I think it's not a great plan to go alone. Two people in a room is good. Three maybe is optimal. I've been in rooms where you have 10, 12 people on one side, one glorious moment, dealing with a massive chemical company. And I think there were 11 people on their side to start with, and they all peeled off down to two guys, the general counsel and one other guy left behind. And our side said, "Oh, Barry," or whatever his name is, "are you happy to continue?" And he looked across, he said, "Now it's about even." And there was still 11 of us on our side. He was a polymath, smarter than 11 of us in the room. Anyway, but two people, basically one to listen, one to talk, one to take notes, one to talk. It's exhausting. If you spend hours in a room discussing, trying to keep things in your head, trying to keep track of where things are going, trying to spot people pulling stunts on you or trying to get away with things, it's exhausting. And doing it alone is not a sensible plan. So I would take at least two people. When I was in Japan, we used to take a translator, a commercial guy, me as the lawyer, and usually a technical guy. So there would be four of us. And the big organizations we were talking to would field 8 or 10, but that's just the Japanese way. But at minimum two, and you're fooling yourself if you think you can do it alone.
Any tips or advice, Chris, about how you then manage the dynamic within your team? Do you always have one person who's sort of the spokesperson? And if you do, what happens if that person's not feeling particularly well or they get exhausted?
Yes, you have to have worked at it before. I mean, I worked with Monsanto. Me and a guy called Mike, lovely guy, taught me a huge amount about negotiation, but he was always definitely the leader. And you have to have little signs, so you'd have breakouts. Sometimes I said, "Mike, I think we need to just step out on this." He had a trick, actually, where he would simply say, "I need to go and talk to head office." And he and I would leave the room. We'd walk around the building, not talk to anyone at all. And he'd come back in and say, "They said no." But Mike was always the lead. That's very important. You can't have two leaders in a negotiation, otherwise you tear each other apart. But yeah, I mean, the idea of having a couple of people get sick, people get delayed on airplanes, stuff happens to cause problems, and you don't want to be left in a position where only one of your team is available or only one of your team knows what's going on, because you then weaken your negotiation position.
Okay. And does it matter? Does it make a difference to who is on your team if you are negotiating in person or over a screen or on your home territory or overseas?
there are so many dynamics here. I mean, the cost of doing business is huge. Do you think of the cost? Because my trips to Japan were sort of $5,000 or $6,000 events, and that could be quite a struggle for smaller companies. Whether you go to them or they come to you, sometimes it's courtesy. The Japanese customers that we were talking to would never come across the pond, whichever pond you're talking about, Pacific or Atlantic. So I had to go to them just simply to get the meetings. And there is a big issue about home advantage, and the ability to storm out of a room is quite an interesting thing. I've only had to do it, or felt the need to do it once or twice. But storming out of your own room is far less impressive and far less practical than being able to say, well, I'm going home now then, we're leaving. And leaving. Because if you leave your own room, at some point you've got to go back. That diminishes the power of your dramatic exit quite substantially, as I found to my cost in a meeting with DuPont many, many years ago. And I'd been up all night drafting and got really tired. And they hadn't read the documents that I'd delivered to them at 6 a.m. So I said, actually can't be bothered to read it. And I'm not staying. So I left. And then I thought, well, now what do I do? Because they're in my room. So I had to walk around and go get a cup of coffee and then sidle back in and say, well, let's carry on then. So home advantage for negotiation is not always what it's made out to be. And I have to say, the Japanese were terribly gracious about the fact that I had gone all that way to see them. They still never agreed anything I asked for, but they were at least nice about it.
I guess you have to match the size of the deal and the importance of the deal with the resource that you're going to be putting into the negotiation to get there. Okay, so we know where we're going. We know what the format of the meeting is going to be. We know who's going to be there from our team, and we've worked out what roles the people on the team are going to be playing, who's going to be leading, who's going to be the technical support, etc., etc. What pre-meeting planning is your team going to do?
I was educated, luckily, and sounds grand, at the Harvard Law School negotiation program now many, many years ago, but I don't think their approach has changed. They introduced, possibly alien to many people, is think about what the other party wants. They had a sort of adage that there's no harm in the other side getting what they want, provided you get what you want. They're famous for coming up with the book, Getting to Yes, and then they went to Beyond Winning. And their whole concept is around this notion of taking away the idea that you're fighting in a negotiation, that you're actually trying to get a relationship or some sort of deal that is mutually helpful to everybody. One good place to start when you're planning your negotiation is to ask yourself what you think the other party wants. Your sales folk or whoever's brokered got you to this stage who should have a pretty good notion of what you're negotiating about and why you're there and what the other party wants. So you should be able to make a fairly decent stab at a list of what you think the other party wants, and even perhaps why they want it. But if you have a list then of, and it can be 3 items, 5 items, whatever you can think up, and then you start maybe seeing gaps. So we don't know why they want that. Perhaps it's worth asking why they want such a thing before we go in. And then you go through your process, which is, well, what do we want out of it? And you make your own list. And then something quite interesting happens because you can start to connect the dots, if you like, and you've got a list of items on the board. And for example, they've made it very clear to us that they want high quality product. Well, that's funny, isn't it? Because we already think we deliver a high quality product. When you suddenly start to realize is you actually agree with them quite a lot. Possibly up to 80%, you already agreed with them. So you start to take the fire out of the negotiation in the sense of, well, we actually agree with them 80% of what we think they want.
I mean, I guess at this stage, there's been some interaction with the other side. So to an extent, we're guessing about what they want, but there ought to have been some clues in interactions and correspondence up to this point. That means that whilst you are guessing, it's an informed position that you're taking.
Well, yeah, I think you've probably got 3 criteria. We absolutely know they want this because they told us. We think they want this because they hinted at it, or we're guessing they want this because everyone asks for this, or we've looked at their website. So you're pressing the sales folk or whoever's set up the deal to have done their front end work to get as much certainty into the game as possible.
What sort of other research might you want to do on your counterparty? You might have a clear idea of what the other side wants because they've told you, or they've inferred very strongly. But as you've mentioned, understanding the why can be really powerful. So what sort of things might you be looking into to understand the why? I mean, I'm thinking, are they in financial difficulties? Have they got a financial period coming up that means they want to get something done? Is it part of a stated strategy that they want to get into a new jurisdiction, etc.?
These days, there's so much information available publicly, I suppose. We shouldn't shy away from going back to something we talked about in the first podcast. Help me to understand. It's a perfectly legitimate question to ask the other side. Ahead of a meeting, we've noted that such and such a thing is important to you. Please confirm and please help us to understand any particular details of that. So again, back to this idea that this should not be a place of fighting. It should be a place of seeking out agreement.
And then what about, again, thinking about the preparation you're doing? So we know the who, we know the where, we know the roles. We've gone through our wants board. So we've listed our requirements and the whys, and we've also listed what we know about the other side, what we know they want, and some guesses as to why they want them. Is this the time also to prepare things like your BATNA, your fallback positions, to identify issues where you might be prepared to concede things, or is it too early to be doing that?
I think if you see this as the prelude to, let's say, the first meeting, then yes, you would be very wise to spend time in your camp, so to speak, asking yourself, well, what happens if price is a big issue? What is our backstop? How low do we go before we say, well, no, there is no more to be given here? And how quickly and on what basis? And is there a trade? We can cut the price if they do all the delivery, if they come and pick up their own stuff. So, yes, you have to dance around the issues and say, well, what ifs? What can we do here? Can we help? Can we give them something more? Is there something they don't know about that we can do for them that has value, which we can plug in and offer them rather than cut price? Can we offer them something more which doesn't cost us so much? There's a lot of dancing alone, if you like, back in your own camp before you get to the meeting room, wherever the meeting room might be. Then when you get to the meeting room and you list out, I remember doing it with another Japanese company, we took them by surprise in the sense that we turned up and said, well, here's a list of what we think you want. They were taken aback. Hang on. And we listed out and they said, well, yeah, that's a good list. What you've actually just done to them, and this sounds a bit callous, but it's not supposed to be. What you've just done to them is to say, well, if we give you everything on this list, we've got a deal then. So they say, yeah, if you give us these 10 things, we've got a deal. You now know the parameters of your discussion and your negotiation, and then you can put your list on your side, and then you can start cross-referring. So, well, we already agree on these 7 things. Let's now talk about the 3 things we don't appear to agree on. And it focuses the meeting to the things that need discussion, the places where you don't agree. There's a tendency to spend an awful lot of negotiation time talking about things that are comfortable and that you all agree on, because nobody likes really openly falling out. So you spend 80% of your time talking about the easy things and then leave 20% at the end to do the difficult stuff. And then you find, oh, we've run out of time.
Just coming back to the preparation phase. So we're still in the week before we're going to engage with the other side. So we've talked about our wants board and thinking about the things that we want and the things that we think the other side want as well. Presumably some of what we would like is information, is a better understanding. So to what extent do you identify specific questions that you want to ask? Is that something that you would have on your wants board?
Definitely. As part of your prep, you're in your notebook, you might have, if you number the wants 1 to 10, item 1, I don't know, you want blue packaging. We typically do white packaging. So can you help us to understand why blue packaging is important to you? it's sort of being a salesman, because what you're doing is you're showing interest in the other party, and therefore you're making them feel important and doing all the things that you're sort of told to do as a good salesperson. I think what we're saying on this is the more work you do up front before you go into the room, the better prepared you are for things to go off when they don't go quite as you expected, or you get a pushback. And information is king, absolutely. Help me to understand why this is important.
Okay, and then final question on this preparation phase. In your experience, to what extent is it important that you think about how the meeting is going to pan out? Do you need to prepare the order in which you ask for information, or you put points on the table, or you identify the issues that are more important to you? Would you plan to open the meeting with, well, here are our deal breakers. If you can't agree those, we may as well go home? Or is there a better way to order things? And to what extent is that part of your preparation?
I think, yes, outright aggression from the beginning probably is not a winning strategy. So there's always going to be the soft bits at the front of the meeting. But by using the board or list of criteria, you can gently steering people. So if we agree on those 5 or 6 things, let's not spend time. But it looks as if we've got a problem around price. So can we now delve into the price issue, because we seem to be a bit apart on that, and we'd like to close that gap. My mate Mike, I mentioned before, would have a figurative pot in the middle of the table. And at a certain point after laboured discussions, he would say, I think we've really beaten this to death, so let's put it in the to be agreed box. He would write a little note like price and literally put it on the table in front, and we'll come back to it. Right, let's move over to quality or timing or some other. Let's just stop beating ourselves with it. In a big negotiation, you're never going to agree everything in one day. So be happy to say, well, we can't agree that. Let's put it to one side and stop it being a thorn in our side for at least a day, and then we'll come back.
Okay, so bringing to a conclusion the sort of the preparation phase. You've been working with your team for a week. You feel you're prepared. You're ready to go into the meeting with the other side. Just summarize for me, please, the key points that you need to have thought about in that preparation phase.
Who's going in? We said, again, referring back to our previous podcast, sometimes you leave the very biggest gun outside. You leave the CEO to come in as a final deal maker, so to speak. So you pick your team, but maybe leave your most powerful speakers for the final stages. You've got to decide the where. There's a real dynamic importance as to the where. Do your homework, deep dives to understand as much as possible, and try to identify what you don't know is as important as what you do. If you can find out the answer to things you already don't know, then great. Otherwise, ask when you first get in. The harder you can work up front, the less hard you have to work in the negotiation.
Thanks very much, Chris. So, on today's episode, we've covered preparing for a negotiation. And on the next episode, we'll cover what happens next, taking you inside the meeting room of the first formal negotiation. If you enjoyed our discussions, you can subscribe to our monthly TLD talks covering a wide range of legal and management topics. You can also find TLD talks on Apple, Spotify, and Google. The details are also on our website, www.thelegaldirector.co.uk. If you'd like to know more about negotiation, or how to prepare for it, or how to get better at it, or you'd like to know more about the wider work of the legal director and how a part-time legal director can save you time and money, then do give us a call on 020 3056 8538 or visit our website.